In the beginning, we should not try to observe all 6 sense doors at once. We have to concentrate the mind at only one point, not have it divided in all directions. With the door of the eye, for example, we should pay attention to the point of seeing, the thing that sees. We always think it's I see, but in reality the thing that sees is vijnana, the knower of the eye, which is formed upon contact at the eye with color and light. With the door of the ear, we should focus on the point where the sound meets the mind. We should just stand and observe. But the mind sense door is the head of all sense doors. The object rises and falls from the base of the mind. So we should get to know the mind first. And how do we focus our attention if we want to know the sense door of the mind? What do we have to observe? The mind we have, together with its tendencies and habits of thought, is formed of sankhara, action. And thinking in itself is not the mind. We have to see what directs the thinking, the intention that directs the thinking. So we have to concentrate the mind at only one point, not have it divided in all directions. Focus it first. Understand how to focus it at the mind. For this, we have to concentrate on the fact that thinking is an intention. So what do we mean by that? In the beginning, we can start with thoughts. For example, you can think of a word, any word. In fact, the word itself is not the object, is not the thought. When we form our thoughts using words, we have to focus on the action of thinking, not what the thought is about, not the content of the thought. Don't look at the thought about this or the thought about that, the action of thinking, the intention that drives the thought. If we are lost in thought, forming thoughts with no observation, no awareness, it means that there is no sati, no mindfulness, and thus we know nothing. This is very important to pay attention to this in relation to morality of speech. How are we supposed to have right speech if we don't have awareness of our mind, if we don't have awareness of how our thoughts form? How do we speak? How does speech happen? How do we form words, the intention to speak? Do we know how this happens? Do we know whether it's right or wrong? Just mindlessly, without awareness, talking in itself is without morality. If talking is to be moral and good, there must be sati at the mind to check the mind as it wants to form the words. So there must be consideration of how to use the proper words, whether it is useful, beneficial or not. If it's useful and beneficial, then it is correct. But without having a strong sense of morality when we speak, we can't benefit or help anyone. There are many words, but we don't consider whether they are good or bad, whether they're useless or useful. And this good and bad is, again, not the content of the thought, it's what drives the thought. Thinking and speaking is the actor, like the puppet, but we have to look at the one directing it, the puppet master. This right or wrong action, even right or wrong speech, it starts from here, from the base of right or wrong intention. There are 3 ways of thinking wrongly. There's moha thinking, thinking unaware, thinking without knowing, in ignorance. That's moha. There's craving thinking and there's angry thinking. And it's possible to think with only moha. With just moha thinking, it means there's no aim, thinking this or that without any specific aim, without any purpose. For example, just thinking words of nonsense, rolling in useless thought, daydreaming. We can see very easily that we're drowning in thoughts, and of course we're in moha, not knowing anything. This is called thinking with no purpose, useless, no morality, and we can see already that it's moha. So this kind of wrong thinking is first. This is always first. This unawareness is there. Then the feeling of agreeable or disagreeable, happiness or happiness with the object of our thought will add to that later. So, for example, thinking about a fun subject that we like to play with, a pleasant daydream, that's both moha and lopa. Craving is there before playing with the thought, to play with the thought and to roll in it. The fact that you don't even realize whether you're thinking or not, whether the thoughts are good or not, is moha. Moha mixes with craving and then lopa, desire. Desire to play with words and make jokes is also an example of the same thing, doing it without knowing. preoccupying your mind with this. And as for anger, that is born from the seed of unhappiness, aversion. Thinking follows such unhappiness. It's looking for rude or harsh words in order to hurt. When there is anger in the mind, that's when we are trying to find rude or harsh words to speak. But it's not the words that matter, because there are many words and they can be used for speaking good things as well as for speaking badly. We have to find the thought first, the intention driving the thought. The cause of our action, the cause of right or wrong, is here, not the emotion itself or in the words. And here too is where we can find right thought and right speech. For example, considering whether something is beneficial or not is also within our thought, our mind. But if we don't see these things and experience them, then it means we are in moha, trying to find ugly words just to say something. So this is what we have to learn, and it's not easy in the beginning, because when we are thinking or when we are speaking, all the focus is normally on the subject, on what our thought is about, on what our speech is about, on the story that the mind is telling itself. But we have to learn to ignore this and focus directly on the act of thinking. The source of all our problems is here, and the key of having right mindfulness, having a guard over our six sense doors, lies right here. These good or bad intentions arise here. So now we also have to know what we mean by good. If there are three ways of wrong thinking, then good right thinking is opposite of that. Moha has to be replaced with amoha, with a knowing, with mindfulness. And only then can the craving be turned to renunciation, be turned to letting go. Only then can anger be turned to compassion, be turned to goodwill. So first, if it's good, that implies already that there is observation and self-discipline. If there's no self-discipline, it's unwholesome, it's bad. So where can we find good intention? It is when we are mindful and aware of our own mind. Thinking in this case is useful. It knows the benefit, knows the purpose. Without it being useful, without it being beneficial to somebody, then already it's not moral. We have to be very careful about morality. It's very important. Without it, we can't progress in the practice. It is essential. And on the other side, we fall into a great state of suffering because of the lack of morality. So although morality is not the entirety of the practice, it's not enough in the practice, it is the base. Without correcting this point, we can't go any further. So, while speaking, we are usually mindless. We speak right away with no observation, no self-discipline in the first place, and this is very important. If we don't know how this works inside ourselves, then we can't be properly moral. And so we have to be very careful, starting with our mind, the thinking in our mind. As we said in the beginning, the mind sense door is the head of all sense doors. All objects of thought, ideas, emotions, everything rises and falls from the base of the mind. All this must be considered merely in order for our speech to be truly moral. And if we don't know, there is no morality within ourselves. When we have to say something, we have to be able to search for the proper words. And it is not easy to be mindful of how we select what words to say, whether they are beneficial or not, of our intention of speaking as we speak. If you are careful, you won't dare to speak easily.